Well, first, there's a little bit of apprehension. I mean, there are no manual controls. It feels like a living room that's transporting you. But then they get in, and there's a lot of excitement. They are looking around, pushing buttons. Obviously, you have to buckle up. If you don't, by the way, you will get a little message telling you to buckle up. And then you push start, and you go.
Hi, good morning, Aicha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again.
So maybe for people who are not familiar, tell us a little bit about what distinguishes Zoox from some of the other AVs on the market, and do you agree that they look like toasters?
Toasters are cute. Computers like symmetry. So we are totally okay owning that. Look, I mean, at Zoox, we are reimagining mobility on demand with basically a purpose-built robotaxi. We did not, and since inception, we've been super consistent. We think that the purpose-built robotaxi is the best opportunity for safety and for rider experiences. And so that's what we've been up to. And since the last time, they are now on public roads, and friends and family are getting to enjoy it, and trusted riders are coming soon too.
Yeah, so purpose-built robotaxi, what does that mean you're not doing that some other AVs are doing?
We are, well, couple things. First of all, we are not taking an existing passenger car and adding sensors and compute to make it essentially driverless. We know that works. I mean, we can see them in San Francisco, but we think that when it comes to rider experiences, when it comes to safety, when it comes to operational costs on the path to profitability, our approach is better. We're not saying anybody else's is bad. The other thing we are not doing is, I'm really sorry, we're not making your passenger car, whatever you drive, driverless. We're not in that business.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that. What gives you a better path to profitability than some other firms when you're doing this robotaxi specific model?
So what's great about Zoox is from the beginning, they didn't go, oh, okay, there is self-driving technology, what do we do with it? It was more around personal transportation, around a better way to do mobility on demand. And it wasn't like, let's take a car and see what we can do to it. It was, in order to provide that, and in order to have an electric fleet out there that is constantly picking up, dropping off, what is the best way to do that? And from there, we sat down, well, I wasn't there, but the two co-founders and the founding team sat down and really, on a clean sheet of paper, looked at the architecture, looked at the design, whether it's redundancy, safety, innovation, everything that was needed to be done, and really thought about the customer. We have pictures, actually. We have carriage seating, which now we take for granted because we ride every day. But we have a picture, I think it's maybe 2014 or 2015, where they put up two little banks, and they are sitting down and saying, okay, what's the spacing? What's going to feel intimate if you're traveling as a group? But what's also going to feel just spacious and comfortable, irrespective of what you essentially look like. So it's all of these mini little decisions that you make for the rider and also for safety.
And that gives you a better path to profitability?
Well, yeah, because that means you think about operations. You know, I always take the example of aviation. It took a while to get to where we are now today, and a lot of thinking about the fleet management, thinking about charging, thinking about what is happening when you're roaming around picking up customers, thinking about the layer up top, and frankly also thinking about just, if we end up with a robotaxi where you still have as many humans taking care of it to get it to work, that doesn't really work. Your ratio of folks that are helping the robotaxi has to be good, otherwise you didn't really solve anything from an economic standpoint.
Interesting. So as Andrew mentioned, you've recently deployed in Las Vegas. What have you learned from those AVs on the road?
Well, first I'm learning to sleep again. I'll be very honest and candid. The first week I was like, wow, this is happening. Before that, we were in Foster City, and I get to see it every day. I pull up to work, I'm leaving, I'm in a meeting, I turn around and I see it. So it's kind of like your little baby is right there, you can see it. Now you're sitting in the Bay Area, and basically the ops team said, stop calling us. Because I was every day saying, how is it going? How is she doing? Anything happened? Was there an interesting scenario? And we've learned a lot also about how people are reacting when they see it, how to interact with all of the community. So Lots of little pickups, and the riders are giving us feedback, including my own children.
Yeah, interesting. What do your kids say?
They gave me a 4 out of 5.
Not so bad.
No, I wanted a 5.
What didn't they like?
A couple things on couple placement of things that they were like, you could have done better there. And, but you know, they're teenagers.
Well, it's nice to have an in-house focus group. So you mentioned scenarios. So what are the toughest scenarios for your vehicles, the ones that you are really still working on, maybe having a hard time cracking? Is it turning left, pulling over, snow?
Oh, we're not working on snow. I mean, the vehicle is capable. We've tested it on snow, so from the dynamics, that's fine. But in terms of the business itself and the AI stack, we are not working on snow. Look, it's nominally, we do quite well. But it's every little, things went a little faster, things went a little slower, somebody stepped in, you know, scooters, bikers, bike lanes, motorcycles, all these kinds of things. And but we build a bank of scenarios around them. We make sure we build up our simulation. And one of the things at Zoox is we believe in tiny, small, medium, large. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, despite whatever was said in 2017. And so we're just building and making sure that we have a safety case that we can rely on, where all of the data and all of the quantification makes a lot of sense and is predictable and repeatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, a few months ago, there was an incident where regulators started looking into 2 situations where Zoox vehicles braked and then were rear-ended. What happened there, and did you make any changes following those incidents?
Yeah, so we have a test fleet that has essentially the identical compute and sensor configuration. If you are in San Francisco or Las Vegas or Seattle, you see them roaming around. We're also starting to test in Miami and Austin. So those test vehicles have a safety driver. They are in autonomy most of the time, but the stack is in charge, and the safety driver can take over if either they are not comfortable or if we're encountering a situation that we're not comfortable with. In this case, essentially what happened, first, you collaborate and cooperate with the authorities. They are doing their jobs. We are sending out these machines and computers on wheel to drive amongst humans. So we welcome the collaboration, the participation. Second, we gave them all the information and data. Obviously, we looked at the scenarios themselves and said, is there anything we can do better? Is there anything we can do differently? And we've been doing that as we speak, and then represented that information and essentially reloaded the software releases.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, there's also been a few other incidents from some of your competitors recently. The Federal Highway Agency investigated Waymo vehicles earlier this year. My colleague Jessica Matthews at Fortune published an investigation into an incident in which a cruise vehicle dragged a woman for 20 feet as it tried to pull over. So what is going on, and are these incidents leading the public to lose confidence in AVs?
Well, there was a lot in your question, so we're going to back up the boat a little bit. First of all, I don't know that we're competitors, we're fellow travelers. In 2019, I remember looking at the California DMV sort of test list, and I think there were 70 of us testing in San Francisco. I think the industry has sort of matured and consolidated. It's a huge, very interesting market, and there's a handful of us that are going after it, which is good. You're never going to hear me say a competitor or a fellow traveler did something bad. That's just not going to happen. Along the way, and in deploying this technology, there will be issues. The question is, how do you handle them? How do you deal with the authorities? How transparent are you? And making sure that you talk to the public overnight. Now, if you show up with a gigantic fleet before you're ready, bad things will happen. But yeah, the authorities will deal with you and the customers will deal with you. When it comes to trust, I don't know that we're in the trust business, but it's implicit, it's expected. So we have to deliver it and we have to deliver value. If we don't do that, customers won't ride. And if they don't ride, we can't sustain a business. But if we do it in little steps and we take feedback and we're transparent, we'll be just fine.
So what do you think customers are saying right now? How are they feeling about AVs in this moment?
From what I'm reading online and also what we're seeing with folks when they ride, I hope you come by and take a ride. In Las Vegas specifically, it's pretty impressive in terms of everything that's happening. Look, there's a little bit of, Well, first, there's a little bit of apprehension. I mean, there are no manual controls. It feels like a living room that's transporting you. But then they get in, and there's a lot of excitement. They are looking around, pushing buttons. Obviously, you have to buckle up. If you don't, by the way, you will get a little message telling you to buckle up. And then you push start, and you go. So the first 2-3 minutes, it's like, oh my gosh, it's going. And there's a lot of looking around. People are taking pictures. I have to tell people, you're not the celebrity, the Robotaxi is. And then people forget. And they start discussing and talking or reading or doing whatever, reclaiming that space and doing whatever they want. So that's the general sentiment. A lot of wonder, but a lot of, oh, this is normal. I can see this being my mode of transportation in the future.
Interesting. I'm going to come to everyone for questions in a moment, so if you have anything, please start thinking. Aicha, just in general, are robotaxis safer than human drivers?
Robotaxis that are deployed on public road are safer than human drivers within the operational design domain they are deployed in. They are not ubiquitously safer than human drivers everywhere, which is why tiny, small, medium, large, and which is why you stay within your ODD, because that's where it's proven. Having said that, I want to be very clear. We talk a lot about the fatalities in the United States, somewhere around 43,000 a year, and it is true that the majority of those are caused by human drivers doing something they shouldn't be doing, and computers won't do that. However, I think it's really important to also say that collectively in the United States, we drive 100 million miles per single fatality. That is an incredible bar to meet. And so there are a lot of nominally everything goes well, but you have to make sure that the unpredictable you are able to handle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions for Aicha? No, oh, one right there. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jessica Matthews. I'm a reporter at Fortune magazine. One of the reasons that some of your competitors have left steering wheels and the pedals in the vehicles is in case an incident happens and a human has to come into the car and take control of it. And Cruise has been developing Cruise Origins. They've been slow to release them on the road. Those also do not have steering wheels and pedals. So I was curious, what exactly happens with your vehicles if a human does have to take over and they are not able to manually drive the vehicle?
Thank you for your question, much appreciated. You definitely follow the industry. This vehicle, there is no taking over manually. So I think your question is, if it doesn't know how to do something, it calls the teleguidance center and says, I need help, either for permission to break a rule, safely, it's still, AI is still in charge, still making the decisions, or we give it breadcrumbs, we call it, for a suggested trajectory that it still decides. So let's say a very sort of unstructured construction zone, and then it is still in charge after it gets the trajectory of saying, I can make that trajectory or not. Now, there are situations, we don't just look at, when it comes to safety, we look at the scenarios, but we also look at not being stuck. And so we put an incredible amount of work in not being stuck prior to deployment, because we understand that. Now, if you're stuck, depending on the level of being stuck, like you can't get out of it at all, that's the worst case scenario, because then you have to send a tow truck. But obviously we work and we do all of our simulation and all of our quantification to make sure that those are very rare. And in between, we can give commands to the vehicle to pull over or to take itself to a certain destination and how much time it has to do that. So there's a whole level of thinking that is blended in the deployment exactly for those reasons. But no manual, I mean, the way we look at life is if you have to count manual interventions, this is not a robotaxi.
Interesting. Any other questions for Aicha? Oh, one right here.
Hi there, Jonathan Foster from Zenith Capital. I'm curious if you think that the current system of cameras and computer vision on your vehicles is sufficient to take this industry all the way to like a mature, safe environment, or will we need some kind of federal and state infrastructure to kind of cabin what these companies are building on, like a network of sensors or other types of guide rails for these vehicles to operate in?
Thank you. Great question. So this is a little bit of a philosophy discussion, so or posture. At Zoox, we believe that we have to be able to deploy the Robotaxi within the current infrastructure. Why? Because you don't, when it's a safety critical product, you don't want to count on infrastructure that might be available in LA but not in Atlanta, or might be available or calibrated differently. So we built and architected our sensor suite and compute with the understanding that we live within the current infrastructure. Now, in the future, if infrastructure becomes available, we have a very modular architecture that will allow us to take advantage of that, but out of the gate, that is not something we want to rely on.
Got it. Another question over here.
Hey, good morning. Todd Bennett, Deer Valley Resort. When you talked about not yet being in winter, my heart sunk just a little bit.
Sorry.
Two-part question. One, could you talk about the operational challenges in winter? They're probably obvious, but I'd love to hear from your perspective. And number two, would you ever be interested in a pilot?
Okay, I'll start with number two. Let's talk. And then, look, the thing, we pride ourselves with, this is a very serious endeavor, and I think you've seen that if you do a lot of hype, eventually the chickens, they come home to roost, so we don't want to be in that situation. The issue with snow is that at least today, we use maps, right? And we use what we call our view of the road network, meaning where things are. And when it's snowing, again, the dynamics of the vehicle are fine. We've been testing in snow for a while. The problem is the world is changing constantly. And depending on how, like which plow driver was, he or she or they plowed differently. And where we thought there was a road, there isn't one. And if it's happening on just like, let's say, a short distance, that's not a problem. But if it's continuously happening, there are things that we need to do differently in perception and in planner, meaning trajectory generation, that we're not focused on right now. That's the honest to God truth, at least at Zoox.
It's tough. Well, I'm in New York, and I feel like it's a similar version
Well,
of the
New
problem.
York has lots. I mean, it is the holy grail for the business, but whoosh,
Yeah?
not easy.
Oh, that's for sure. Okay, so let's talk about commercialization. When do you think the public will allow for it?
I think, do you mean for the industry or do you mean for Zoox?
Maybe both.
Both? I mean, the public is already allowing it. If you are around San Francisco or in certain parts of Arizona, it is impossible to not see, I'll say it, a Waymo, yay, Takeda, and Dimitri, roaming around. And it's open to the public, by the way, so there's no like special, you don't have to have a connection. You can literally go to the App Store, download the app, and ride and experience it. For us, we'll start that journey end of the year, beginning of next year. Right now, we have external people riding, but they are not paying customers, again, giving us a lot of feedback. So if we continue doing that, tiny, small, medium, large, we engage with the community, we provide the value, I think, and we don't do anything stupid as an industry, the public will I mean, look, aviation, right? Occasionally something bad happens, yeah? But we still go to the airport and get on planes.
Well, we haven't mentioned yet Amazon. You're owned by Amazon.
Yeah.
What kind of timeline does Amazon leadership want on commercialization?
Whatever timeline we agreed upon as a plan of record, so the same timeline I just gave you, and then we build on that. We don't have a set of books for Zoox and a set of books for Amazon. It's too tiring to remember two different stories, because that's just not how we roll. So they have the same view and the same plan I just gave you.
Yeah, okay. So let's do some predictions. AVs, Zoox, 5 years, 10 years, what does it look like?
5 years, 10 years, we are doing well in the Sun Belt. We are starting to figure out how to drive where, I mean, we can handle rain, fog, and everything, but snow is starting to be solved. Highways also are more ubiquitous. And then a surprise, I think we'll see a TAM expansion. There are a lot of folks right now who don't ride, but I think they'll be very attracted to this form of mobility on demand.
Yeah, interesting. And you've mentioned aviation a few times. You're on the board of Joby Aviation. So you have insight into the future of transportation and mobility beyond just robotaxis. So if you kind of expand that, how are we going to get from point A to point B in any mode of transportation in 5 or 10 years?
What we're all hoping, I mean, this is the United States of America. It was built a lot on automotive, so we're not thinking it's going to be zero cars. But we're hoping to start convincing some of us to not have 2.3 cars. Maybe have one point something. And when you're in dense urban environment or in environments where it doesn't really make sense to be driving, you'll be using mobility on demand, fully electric, fully autonomous, a cabin space that you can use for conference call, you can use for music, you can use for sleeping, whatever rocks your boat, and it's an extension of your space. And then when you're not using it, somebody else is using it. I mean, that is the way to generate scale, to generate value for customers, for society, and we hope that that's something we can deliver.
Interesting. And just to circle back, New York as the Holy Grail, what makes New York the most challenging place?
Well, first of all, I mean, I don't think New York customers will enjoy the, hi, sorry, Zoox is not available today because it's snowing. That's just not how it's going to work. Second of all, Manhattan is tough. I mean, in terms of scenarios. On the one hand, it's a grid, which is nice. But on the other hand, it's one of the toughest traffic areas. And then second, also, from a regulatory standpoint, there's still some work to do.